With economic powerhouses like China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia turning its back on the USD, many are worried that the American dollar era is coming to an end. All the things that are unfolding behind the scenes right now is truly fascinating, and especially after all the collapse of recent banks and even seeing how the economy is slightly improving, I highly recommend that every single person pay attention to this video because it could certainly change the way that your own financial future looks. So to begin this video, what is a world reserve currency and why is it even important? So the world reserve currency is a simple currency that is widely accepted by countries and individuals all around the world. This is pretty much just a dominant currency in the global financial system, and it's used for international transactions such as trade, investment, and lending. Now, the reason world currencies are important is because it makes it safer, easier, and cheaper for countries to do business with one another. Just think about it like this. Imagine if you had to learn a new language every time you wanted to buy something from a different country. Not only that, but a world currency does two things. It keeps the world's economy stable, and second, it mitigates the risk of inflation. Now, economies having stability and inflation are two things that are really in limbo right now. The good news, though, is that without a world currency, it could be way worse than what we're seeing now. If every nation had used different currencies, it would be a lot harder to know how much things are actually worth and what the value of money would be. So let's say, for example, the country of Peru decided to do business with their landlocked neighbor, Bolivia, and sell them fresh fish and other seafood in exchange for their produce. If Bolivia goes ahead and pays Peru in the Bolivian dollar, Peru would now take on the risks of the Bolivian dollar getting inflated because they don't know what the Bolivian government plans to do. Maybe they'll double their money supply and inflate their currency overnight, or maybe just simply the value of their dollar goes down. This is the main reason why a world reserve currency comes into play, because it lets both parties feel safe knowing the payments they send and receive are usually stable and valuable in the form of a simple currency. Another example is if I decided to buy some inventory from China, I do not know what the current rate of China's currency is. So for me to transfer that over and then do that, it's just much more of a process, but it has been working in the favor of the entire world, where the US dollar has been the main currency that people use. Now, it hasn't always been like this because the US has only held the world reserve currency for about the past 80 to 100 years now. Based on historical evidence, the average lifespan of a world reserve currency lasts for about 94 years. With the US holding it for within that time, a lot of people are beginning to believe that the US is already overdue to lose their global currency status, while others believe another one is about to take over soon. This is part of the reason why you're going to be seeing a ton of headlines on why the US dollar is ending, and it's also because some of these other countries are now teaming up trying to create their own currency. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are a few countries right now supposedly coming together to create a new alternative to the dollar world reserve currency called BRICS. Now, this idea didn't just come out of nowhere, but it sprung out of the incentive to move away from dollar dependence after they realized just how powerful the US nation has become. This also has many more people fearful that a new world order could be emerging as economic powerhouses increase their efforts to distance themselves from the US dollar. If you ever hear about the term the Great Reset or the New World Order, a lot of this is supposed to fall under that umbrella. Even China specifically has mentioned that they wanted to de-dollarize parts of the world. And they even told Russian President Vladimir Putin that the world is about to undergo changes the likes of which we haven't seen for 100 years. Now, if this went ahead and happened, it would take a huge, significant hit to the US economy, and even more so if other countries followed suit and began using BRICS as the new currency instead of the US dollar. In fact, we're already seeing the possibilities of this happening with countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey all applying to join the BRICS group. Now, on one hand, you're going to have some people saying that it's not a big deal and they won't make a difference because the only major economy in BRICS is China, but in my opinion, that could be a little bit of short-sighted thinking. Although even countries like Brazil is small compared to the US, it is still one of the largest in all of South America. Taking another step back, geographically, China and India are also two of the largest economies within all of Asia. If countries all of a sudden began transacting with their new world reserve currency with neighboring nations, it could send a ripple effect of countries leaving the US dollar system. Now, to make matters worse, Brazil and China have recently struck a deal to ditch the US dollar when paying one another for trade goods, and they will instead be using the Chinese yuan. Now, the Brazilian president has also been very vocal, urging developing nations all around the world to find an alternative currency to the dollar. And all this is coming right after China and Russia decided to do the exact exact same thing. Now, with those following reasons, it's showing just how significantly the US dollar is under threat. But the main and last reason why we should be paying attention is because of something called the Petro Dollar. In case you didn't know, the term Petro Dollar refers to a situation in which the US dollar is used as that primary currency for all international oil trade. Since the 1970s, the United States and Saudi Arabia came to an agreement where all oil sold by the OPEC would be made in US dollars. Well, why would they do that? It's because the US offered their military protection over their land and oil fields. Now, the OPEC is estimated to have around 41% of the world's crude oil and hold 77% of the known reserves. If you happen to be another country along the planet Earth that needs to purchase oil for energy, which is just about every single country here, you would need to use US dollars. Now, over the past few months, it looks like the petrodollar might be getting replaced by the Chinese version called the Petro Yuan. This year threatens to replace the US dollar as a main currency for purchasing oil, and it could really mean big trouble for the States. So I explained during the beginning part of the video why the US dollar was set for a reset, and that's because it fell within that 80 to 100 year and holding the dominant currency. But it seems like what really just set the dominoes to all start collapsing is because of these two reasons. Right now, it looks like some countries are losing faith in the US government and the economy. With the US economy printing as much money that it did within the past few years during the whole pandemic, it has gone ahead and doubled its money supply. Since countries agree on a world currency to avoid inflation as one of the biggest reasons to use it and to also maintain the value of their own assets, with the current rising inflation situation that seems like it's not yet under control, it makes other nations look towards another currency that might be more under control. The second reason also has to do with the entire sanction that we hit with Russia way back a few months ago. After the whole invasion of Ukraine, it looks like new alliances are being formed because some powerhouse nations like China were also not happy to see the strength of US sanctions kicking in. Ultimately, the reason is a lot of these other countries that oppose the US just don't want to be reliant or dependent on the dollar anymore. Now, this point in the video, I think here is the most important, so I'd definitely be paying attention. First of all, should we be worried about the US dollar really collapsing? And if it does, how can you protect yourself? Right now, one of the things that's going to get the most amount of clicks is going to be headlines like the US dollar is coming to an end, or one of the reasons why you might have clicked on this video. Unfortunately, that's the only way that it looks like many people may pay attention to what's coming up, but I'm gonna reveal to you guys the truth. I would not be losing sleep over this. Although we might be able to see the dollar losing its power or weakening within the next year or in the next decade, you have to realize that since 2021, statistically, the US dollar still accounted for about 88% of all global foreign exchange transactions. If and when the US dollar loses its world reserve currency, it'll most likely be done through a slow and gradual shift rather than an overnight occurrence. With that being said, there are still many ways that you can protect your assets and to make sure that you are looking ahead towards the future so you don't get the short end of the stick. Pretty much, real quick to sum it up, instead of investing into things where the US dollar is still gonna have a lot of different type of volatility, invest in hard assets, which include precious metals, real estate, and commodities that can provide a hedge against currency inflation or devaluation. Diversifying your assets across different currencies and hedges or investments can help reduce your exposure to the entire dollar getting devalued. Now, I think a lot of people during this time will also push two things, and naturally, it would make sense for me to be pushing crypto and saying, you know what, put it in Bitcoin, that's what it's made for. But within the past few years, we've seen how Bitcoin follows very closely suit to what the S&P 500 does, and I believe right now there is still a strong chance that the US economy, including the stock market, could also take another hit. Now, I think that's the way it is for the time being, but that doesn't mean in the future, maybe in the next 3, 5, or 10 years, that's what it's still gonna be like. I still envision and hope for a future where Bitcoin and cryptocurrency really does serve as an alternative where we don't have to rely on governments to hold the value of our money. This is the sole reason why Bitcoin was created, but if we take a step back and realize that right now, even the major holders of Bitcoin are something to do with institutions or governments, it doesn't help the fact with the situation that it could get dumped anytime. Regardless of all the FUD and the whole entire situation, I've been continuing to dollar cost average into the market. It's actually been paying out very well because I did have a good reset since the beginning of this year where I'm up over 50%, even 60% on most of my investments. You're also gonna hear a lot of people telling you, you know what, just invest into the S&P 500 and the power of compound interest is gonna make you a multimillionaire in like 40 years. But when we take into the account the current rate of inflation, I'm telling you guys, even if you live very frugally and you don't eat out and you miss out on all these experiences that could be a lot of fun, but if you're doing that just to invest into the S&P 500 right now with the fact that you think you're gonna be a multimillionaire in 40 years because of the power of compound interest, take into account a few things. The US dollar getting devalued, take into account inflation where $1 million in 40 years is gonna be worth maybe $300,000-$400,000. It could be worth even less just because of how fast and how high it's still going. I just believe that there are gonna be much better investments that you can make, which include and start with investing in yourself. We're making a lot of videos on this channel, whether it's using credit cards to build up wealth or to look into AI to start your own business where these tools were not existing. Even just 6 months ago, they were not around. You guys can invest in yourself instead and make millions of dollars every single year instead of waiting 30, 40 years to become a millionaire then, where the value of that $1 million is significantly less. And then you realize you've just wasted away your entire life not living up any experiences and living frugally just for you to enjoy these things when you're 60 or 70 years old. Now, ladies and gents, if you guys have not yet watched some of my other videos on how to build wealth, some of the habits that you should start, make sure you check out those playlists because it can definitely give you a good start to your journey. So thank you all so much again for watching this video. Be sure to drop a like if you guys found any value at all. Subscribe to the channel if you guys want to learn more about trying to get rich or becoming the new and improved version of yourself for this year. And on top of that, now thank you all so much again for watching this video. Have a great day and I'll see you all soon. Peace.